Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about Ssangsu Geombup Ibon Form 2, Part 3. Now, I know you guys are smart folk, so you know that I'm wearing this uniform, again, not because the forms are not canonical, because they are in fact as canonical as I know them to be as of the filming of this day. However, again, my interpretations of them are going to be my own, as opposed to, again, what necessarily Korea is saying. Again, if it is what Korea is saying, I'll try to say as much, but essentially assume that's going to be my own, imaginings of what's going on here. Everyone's favorite part of this form, that jump, right? So why would you jump in the form? Now, I've already done videos on this before, but because I want to have a lot of things in a single place as opposed to you going to like 30 different videos, let's talk about it, right? So theoretically, you're deflecting some sort of strike, you're going to be jumping in the air, striking them allegedly in the air, land, right? So, what sort of target are we hitting where we both want to jump as well as do a 180? The 180 portion is actually the easier thing to talk about. The jumping aspect, we'll see, right? So, the idea of someone deflecting in and you're rolling or you're turning around a person. Let's assume that person is going to be right here. If I move around them, not too bad, right? Being able to spin around a target to get maybe a different part to expose themselves isn't too bad. However, a good part of me is like, don't actually do this in a sparring match, which means probably don't actually do this in a fight, because spinning usually doesn't help, right? Because it's going to expose your back, expose the back of your neck. A lot of things are going to be open while you're spinning. It's just way too easy to get countered while you're spinning or stuck. Let's talk about that, right? So if you kind of keep your hands up above the air here, and I kind of hit something or hit the person over here, I'm going to kind of keep moving this way. I'm going to be really awkward trying to pull that sword down. So in general, as you're going through this motion, keep the sword nice and tucked as much as you can, throw it. So that could at least have a sort of passive shield as you're spinning, but still not a great idea, in practice. Another idea that's really, really common in forms is doing a worst case scenario. Will you ever really need to go a full 180 to strike someone? Unlikely. However, if I am used to doing full 180, doing, let's just say like 150, easier. Let alone 90, easier. Right, getting you used to that nice, easy footwork if you're spinning, not jumping. However, by getting used to going full 180, you can essentially do all the shorter ones, but most of the shorter ones, I'm sure they're really weird angles, but you can do the shorter ones more easily. And then there's the jump, right? So we are off the ground, striking someone, and then landing. So I believe this is the canonical interpretation of it. This is also going to be true for Ssangsu Geombup 6, or Ssangsu Geombup Yukban, so 6, right? Where you're doing the false edge strike high. The idea is you're allegedly going for a horse person, so someone on horseback, so cavalry and stuff like that. So allegedly, you've deflected, I don't know, their spear or something. You've jumped up in the air, you've cut the person on the horseback, you're landing, right? So this is a little bit different from the false edge strike, almost like you're using yourself as a pike to get someone off their horse. Jumping and cutting mid-air is something that I have a lot harder. I have a hard time believing, because if they're riding the horse, not just on their horse, but they're riding the horse, yes, they're moving past you, so you can maybe get them. First of all, they're probably going much faster for you to be able to turn, right? So unlikely, even if you magically deflected that sword and you jumped up, they are way gone before you can actually land that cut. So super unlikely that's going to land. So as cool as it would be to imagine you're striking down like a horseman or something like that, unlikely. However, striking down a just tall person with a jump, sure, why not, right? That makes more sense to me that you're just trying to get a little more oomph with that jump as opposed to necessarily going for a very specific type of fighter. So let's talk about that kneel or kneel adjacent combination. So one interpretation is if I was successful in essentially dismounting a cavalryman with that jump, they've fallen down, they're prone, I'm just going to come in with that finishing cut and then turn, get my distance back, and feel safe. So that's a lot of ifs kind of follow that story, right? So you were fighting a horse person, you were able to not just cut the riding horse person, but you deseated them or unseated, there we go, unseated them, and now I finish them and move off. So consistency, sure, I like it, but again, likelihood of it working, very minimal. However, if I was just striking a tall person, noticing that I'm using a high cut, again, I was jumping, or even if I wasn't actually doing the full jump, but doing a high spin through here, by aiming high and then shifting your elevation of the cut is a really nice fighting technique, right? By kind of again moving up and down, staying up, coming nice and low. A lot of different ways you can kind of land a little more strikes, right? So by coming high initially and then coming low with your secondary strike is an interesting introduction of an idea. And then again, going off and doing one of two things with the next combination. So conceptually, I really enjoy that combination, right? Because you do really high motion, really low, and again, it's having that very consistent theme of that rolling diagonal that we talked about, right? Either it's like a shield before I cut, or just a rolling motion, allegedly with a longer weapon. Which kind of, like, if you think about this combination, just for fun, right? So another reason why I don't think this is really what's happening is because if you're using a Ssangsu gun, again, so blade from the bottom of my fist to the ground, if not longer. Imagine trying to whip that all the way around to cut someone, unlikely, right? Versus if you're just using it as a cover here to cut, not as unlikely there. Likewise, coming to a kneel, you're going to either come to a full kneel or what we call a short stance, where the knee is actually above the ground, right? But it's a little bit more kind of like a crouch. I'm here, right? So from here, I can, if I really need to, I'll use this angle instead. If this were a really long sword, it would probably embed itself at this motion. So if I need to, I can kind of clear it out here, and then do our fancy little shift. 1, 2, whoop, and one hand strike this way. So one hand again to get a little more distance. That's really the only reason, right? So a few ways that we've been taught this, right? So from this kneel, you can do a prepare, shift your knees, one-handed, no longer canonical. You could also just do it from this angle so you can see a little better. So this was option 1. Option 2 was essentially keep the sword where it is, and as I shift knees, or from that crouch, just shift this way. Also not too bad, right? Also not canonical, right? So versus, let's do third angle from here. So no, no, yes. So you're gonna notice it's kind of like up, so it's horizontal above my knee. From here, we're gonna turn and cut and go back. So just so you know, right? The idea is whatever this cut is doing is going directly behind me, not a giant massive cut. So for example, this is not what's happening. So if I'm here, bring it back this way, which is very similar to Ssangsu 9, that's not what's happening. The only target is over here. As I go that way, stand back up. And then last thing is going to be what are we doing with that one-handed motion? So 2 interpretations. I don't think either one was confirmed to be the way to go or not. One interpretation is simply clear, noticing this is going to be mostly just even at this level, hip level. Clear, up, defense. Another interpretation is going for their knee or ankle. Sweep, this is going to be a little bit more of a smacking strike. Reach, and then very quickly coming up this way. So notice a difference in tempo. So the knee shot or the ankle shot is going to be more of a whip with a constant acceleration and then deceleration as I'm pulling it back here. That clear shot is going to be a little bit more of a 0 acceleration. There's going to be some acceleration in the beginning, but bear with me. It's a constant clear and back up. So depending on your own interpretation, just be aware of if you're being fast with that strike, or if you're just being like, if something's in my way, we're gonna make sure it's no longer in the way. So that's the end of form 2, right? So that's the second form we've fully cleaned out, right? So there's still going to be obviously a lot of different ideas we can play with, but I think this is a good foundational level for us to kind of have a common ground to talk about, right? So again, forms 1 and 2 in their entirety have so much information that we can kind of like piece apart and really enjoy. So hopefully you and I take the time to fully do that. But with that, make sure you stay safe, stay humble, and keep training.